We wanted to create a fun, non-judgmental space where women can talk about their shared experiences.
Here, we will normalize the challenges we face as females living in a society that dictates unrealistic and outdated expectations on what a woman should be.
Together, we hope to cultivate a supportive community of women who empower one another to courageously live unapologetically.
A quick disclaimer before we get started. Although Cindy and Danielle are licensed therapists, this podcast is not to be interpreted as therapy or a replacement of therapeutic services. It is strictly a conversation between two women about their experiences in the world. If you liked today's episode, please make sure to like and subscribe below. Also, follow us on all of our social media platforms at Unapologetically Females. With that being said, we hope you enjoy this episode.
Here we are, another episode.
Here we are. Hi.
Hi. Today's topic, I feel like we should give like a trigger warning, disclaimer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So today we are going to discuss eating disorders, body dysmorphia,
Diet culture,
disordered eating.
being a woman in today's American society.
That pretty much sums it up. And so, just wanted to put that out there. I know that can be a sensitive topic. And if it's not something that you feel like is healthy to listen to, please
turn us off
and join us next week.
Yes.
All that to say, so you specifically have been working and focusing your work on working with individuals who are experiencing eating disorders.
Correct.
And so tell me, let's talk about that.
Sure.
What's that been like?
So I fell upon my internship when I was in school. And backstory, I've had experience myself with eating disorders for many, many years. Mm-hmm. And I am now eating disorder free, but it took a very long time. I started when I was 10 years old with emotional eating, which then I was in puberty then. And at that time, typically, this is really not well known, but a girl's body is supposed to gain up to 30 pounds during puberty because it's getting ready to be able to carry a child, mm-hmm. And especially back then, I was frowned upon for putting on normal weight. And so my mother put me in Weight Watchers.
At 10?
At 11. And I was in Weight Watchers with a bunch of adults and myself.
Wow.
And I did lose 30-some pounds, but it also taught me how to restrict. Mm-hmm. And so then I became restrict, binge, purge. So I would restrict to the point where I got so hungry that I would binge, and then I would feel guilty, and then I would purge. And then I was also a full anorexic restrictor in college. And along that journey, I also adopted some ARFID traits, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, meaning that certain textures and certain foods would really just completely shut me down, turn me off. I could not intake any food once, the thought of that food came about. So that's how I became interested in working in eating disorders as well, was that I feel like I can bring some empathy and some personal experience into my sessions, having had a little bit of everything mm-hmm. in that realm. So I work with teens to adults, and it's really a challenge. It is the number 2 life taker in mental health. Mm.
So I think, so for me growing up, I was of the era, and what I saw was in media, in tabloids, was, in the 90s. I remember we would get the subscription to People magazine and the supermodel, the Kate Moss era supermodel.
Right.
So it was like stick thin, mm-hmm. That almost like sunken in look mm-hmm. was very, very, very popular.
We were kind of taught that's what we should strive for.
Yeah, that's mm-hmm. what you're supposed to look like. So I think that I've always had, I've had like a weird relationship with food. I do think I'm an emotional eater for sure, or have been, in my life, whether boredom or
Right.
sadness or anger, whether it was emotional eating or emotional restricting,
Right.
And that's a complicated, it's bigger than just, I'm not going to eat or I'm going to overeat. It's a psychological, physical experience, mental experience.
Well, there's some comfort that food does give us, right? Like carbohydrates, for instance, when we crave them during our menstrual cycle, typically raise our serotonin levels. Carbohydrates do. So we're actually craving it for a reason. We're actually craving certain kinds of food for a reason, but we're not taught that.
Right. And same thing around certain emotions and, grief, for example. It is your body's response to, again, crave food because it is a comfort.
Right.
And well, once again, it's not something that's taught. Like, I mean, I learned that in grad school in a traumatic grief course that I took, and how our bodies respond to those types of things. And so
the things that we aren't really taught about food and how emotionally we respond or comfort ourselves with it.
Right. I also think, so like I was saying about growing up and having this, like the trend, the body trend of the time was like tall, very skinny, no curves, which obviously has evolved and changed. But as a little girl, only seeing that, I think that was because that wasn't my body type. I wasn't this like tall stick.
Me neither.
I also look back and go, that whole like body dysmorphic point of view that I had, because I look back at pictures and go, like, I was
Right.
great. Like
But your brain is telling your eyes to see something totally different, which is really powerful and hard to explain to someone who's actually thick in body dysmorphia of, no, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Like, you couldn't have told me different
No.
when I was in high school or junior high, even that I had this definite view of myself of like being just obese, you know what I mean? Like,
right.
And I look at pictures and I'm like,
Not
wow.
so much. Right.
And what that does to, because then you're trying to fit in, or then you're trying to lose weight. I remember there was a certain over-the-counter diet pill that it probably came out before I was in high school, but in high school, and friends were taking it, and I remember there were commercials.
Oh yeah.
And I want to say that was high school, was like the first time that I tried diet pills, and I remember when there was a prescription, the like Fen came out. And I remember I knew someone who was taking that, and and I remember the individual that took that wasn't even overweight. So it was like,
right. That's even scarier.
Right.
We're willing to take medication to risk our health in order to look or fit into a certain box or way of what society is telling us we should look like.
Right. And so, and for a lot of, and I think this is something that you can speak to, like from the mental health side of it, the psychological part of it, many times there are underlying things going on. There are
most times. Yeah.
And so it's a lot of times about control and
comparison is a huge one. As we've said before, like as human beings, it's natural to compare yourself. And comparison is now all of a sudden I'm comparing myself to someone or something. And so now it's like a challenge, right? And so I have to attain that perfect look or what I'm comparing myself to, or else I'm failing.
Right. And then there's the punishment
Oh, yeah.
that gets involved, right?
And
That,
the negative self-talk.
Yep.
The conversation in your head of you're not good enough, or you're not this, or you're not that.
so what are some of the things that that in your practice with individuals, what are some of the things that you work on to help work through the behaviors?
Yeah, really number one. So DBT, or dialectical behavioral therapy, has been clinically proven to be one of the best theories for eating disorders. And the reason is that it teaches us to change our way of thinking. It teaches us to change that negative self-talk in our head, challenge it, at least like notice it, challenge it, and then change it or switch it. Practice opposite action or opposite thoughts. Because especially people who are in eating disorders, their first automatic thoughts are very negative towards themselves. And where that messaging came from is some of that, what you were saying, like there's usually some sort of background before an eating disorder starts, right? Whether that those messages were given to them by someone else in their life, or they heard. It's very common for girls to hear moms growing up talk negatively about their own bodies, and then the young girls will, and boys too, absolutely suffer from eating disorders as well. So I don't want to disclude them, but take on that messaging and listen to what their moms are saying about themselves. And oh gosh, if my mom feels that way about herself, then I should feel this way about myself.
Right.
And then moms who engage in diet culture in order to fix that, then children learn. So kind of going back and peeling back those core beliefs, where they came from, and then challenging them, finding the truth or not truth in them, and just saying, you know, I know this is deeply seated in you and you truly believe this, and it is going to take your life if you continue.
Right. You touched on something about, you know, coming from parents, you know, like with the modeling the behavior, and then you internalize that as a kid. I think I have tried so hard and have not always gotten it right, but just be careful around how I talk about myself in front of my daughter in particular, but my kids.
Right.
And you know, my husband and I constantly talk about, not constantly, but you know, we have conversations around eating healthy, or like we need to tighten things up. And as of recent, we've been talking even more about that because we're going on a cruise next year. And so we're like, we better, you know, whip it into shape.
Right.
And I forget, you know, first of all, my daughter's always listening.
Right. But we forget that they're listening.
Yeah.
Or watching.
So she has asked, you know, like she'll eat something and then be like, is that healthy? Or we'll ask, like she's trying to understand what calories are. And I'm like, you don't need to know, like just eat food that makes your body feel good, you know, like eat. And you mean eat. We obviously try and have like a balance within the house just to be, I don't know, teach, you know, a balanced meal and those habits.
Right.
But like,
but we also try and teach like there is no bad food. There are no bad foods. It's more about, you know, consistency. Like if you're eating a food that isn't, you know, that it has more calories or isn't quote unquote healthy, it's about, you know, how much of that you're intaking in your diet versus other things that serve your body better.
Right.
But, you know, I think that children learn there's bad foods and good foods. There's healthy foods and not healthy foods. And I hear you there. I mean, I raised 2 girls and I felt like I was super conscious about it. And there's been times when they've shared with me that, no, Mom, like we heard you. We heard you. Like we got some bad messaging. And I really have not suffered from an eating disorder since I had them.
Right.
So I think that's the really hard part about eating disorders too, is what part of it is societal messaging and expectations on women as far as bodies and what part of it becomes an eating disorder.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah. There's a fine line.
there's a fine line. Like we did an episode on bathing suit season, right?
Yeah.
And I've yet to meet it's not true. I've met a few in my lifetime, uber confident women in a bathing suit, right? But this time of year is really a hard time of year for a lot of people in general to go to the beach and put on a bikini or a bathing suit and but then to have an eating disorder on top of that,
Right.
it can bring you to that I'm not going outside stage.
Right. You're just hiding.
I'm just hiding. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that balancing the what you just described and the pressures of fitting in and
Being accepted, being
Yes.
liked. Now with social media, and there's all the you can edit everything, and
Yeah.
you can. People send pictures and it'll be like, that's not what that person looks like. Or
Right.
that's not, but it's out of expectations, societal expectations of what you should look like.
Right. And I think that there's this, there's always this pressure that, if I don't fit in or if I don't meet society's expectations, then I won't be successful, or I won't be it's sad. So the pressure of fitting into these norms, and if I don't, then what does that say about me? And so I think that there's this, in individuals that I've talked to and worked with, it's like, then it means I'm not successful. Right. I can't be successful. Right. Or people that I have worked with who have lost a lot of weight and
get more attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the way that they
Positive.
have shared their experience of the general message is like, I am treated better when I'm thinner.
Right.
And that's
so sad.
That
and
is
scary.
so sad. And so that reinforcement that you're getting of the pressure you're putting on yourself, of and perhaps it's through unhealthy behaviors, right? Unhealthy habits.
Right.
I'm not saying that all people lose weight because of unhealthy habits, but for those that do, and then they get this shift from society in how they're treated, and then you let that define you and go like, I am a better person only when I'm thin. I am worthy only when I'm thin. I am, all those messages.
Right. And so for those who are suffering from restricting, when is it enough? When is it ever thin enough? Right. And then that's when the eating disorder takes over literally your brain chemistry and your mind, and you aren't able to really know. And that's why it's so dangerous, because the body dysmorphia is like completely overtaken you. And then also you're never sick enough, you're never thin enough, you're never good enough at it, and to the point where your body will eventually shut down in order to tell you. And emotional eaters, you bring up a good point too, of like, they're not in a body that society has deemed as successful or fit into the right box and look. And so there's a lot of guilt and shame in that. And, typically they're using food as a comfort, and they need that comfort some way in their life, and food has helped them do that. But along with that comes I don't look like I should, or I don't fit in with the way that society says that I should be or look.
Right. And yeah, I think that when you hit on a good point where it's when you said that you keep doing it and you get these reinforcements, and then you crave the reinforcement, and so you never know when it's enough. It becomes a drug.
It does.
It's
and it
an
actually,
addiction.
when your brain is not getting the nourishment that it needs, then it actually becomes a euphoric state. It's like almost like taking a drug. You're definitely in this this state of
Delusion. Yeah.
and things around you don't affect you as much. It's a numbing feeling.
Which is a drug.
It is
right?
a drug, absolutely.
It's like you're desensitized and you no longer feel or have that filter. And you just are craving the high, essentially, the high of external validation
and or numbing yourself from all of the other things that are so hard, that feel so hard in life.
Sure.
That if I just don't give my brain and my body the nutrition that it needs, then I can escape from that mentally.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a scary path. And I don't think that people look at it that way. I think that it's not talked about enough. Relationship with food in general. And, we talk about body image often, but how that connects back to relationships with food and having healthy examples set for you in childhood and how we talk about ourselves and how we talk about food and the pressure around what to eat, what not to eat, having a balanced meal, don't give your kid junk food, don't do there's just so much pressure around all of that. And I think that there's a way to find a balance in all of it, right? Like it's but it takes being mindful of it. And it's hard. It's really, really hard when again, society just reinforces that if you are fit or thin, that you're somehow more superior.
Right.
And
you bring up the word fit, but over-exercise can be a form of an eating disorder as well, right? Like you allow yourself to eat, but you then have to go to the gym for however long to work off all those calories. And the counting the calories and the numbers, like the number on the scale, the number of calories, what I'm willing to intake, what I'm not, how much do I weigh, I have to get to a certain point. That becomes obsessive.
Right. Then it's never enough.
And then it's never enough, right? Like, I need to get to this weight. I got to that weight, but I didn't get what I needed.
5 more.
I thought I would, but I didn't. So now 5 more or whatever that looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was watching something the other day and the individual was very fit, very thin. And she said, I just need to lose 3 pounds.
Right. And you're watching this on TV.
On TV.
So you're not the only one watching that.
Yeah.
And there's people with, moldable minds that are like, oh, well, if she needs to lose 3 pounds and I need to lose 30, whatever. Yeah, it's just so sad.
Very sad.
It's very, very sad.
So for individuals out there that, first of all, you're not alone. Please know that, we, not only do we have our own experiences with,
Poor relationships with food.
Yeah.
And body image.
We work with individuals as well that have that same challenge. There is help.
There is help.
There is help out there.
And there is a chance to change that mindset within yourself and learn to appreciate your body for what it does, not just for how it looks.
Well said. Well, thank you for listening. I think that's a great note to end on. So,
thank you for listening.
As always, I'm Danielle.
And I'm Cindy.